Today we got a story of a Dream Stan that gets so angry that the subscriber says that he doesn't like Dream, that the Dream Stan tries to get the kid expelled from school and ruin his life. Leave a like in the video to claim your free nothing, and let's call the subscriber Kevin. So anyways, this all happens one day when Kevin is sitting at a lunch table and he's talking with this guy that he doesn't know that well about just like YouTube, and then the topic of popular YouTubers comes up, and Kevin mistakenly, he starts off when he talks about popular YouTubers that he doesn't like, and specifically he talks about how he doesn't like Dream. And by the way, you can like Dream, you cannot like Dream. As long as you don't act like this Dream Stan does in the story, I literally have no issue with you. But anyways, right, so Kevin leads with how he doesn't like Dream. And let's just say that the Dream Stan is not very fond of this. So the Dream Stan gets up from the table and looks at Kevin and says what did you say about Dream? That's my favorite creator. And Kevin is a bit of a hothead. He's definitely not one to de-escalate situations. So Kevin does admit that in this situation he wasn't the clear good guy at this point. It's going to be very clear pretty soon that the Dream Stan did something totally not okay. However, right, at this point Kevin does admit that he could have been a bit nicer, because Kevin goes on to say, yeah, I think Dream is the worst creator ever and his fan base is terrible. And at this point, right, the Dream fan does not like hearing this, right? And let me just say, if you like Dream, once again, no issue with you. Just don't act as this Dream Stan is about to act. So the Dream Stan, he's up at the table, he's looking down at Kevin, and he says, I will make sure that you regret ever saying that. And he gets up and he just storms away. And honestly, Kevin doesn't think anything of it until the next day in school. He comes in, and sure enough, he's called he's on the loudspeaker, right? Says, Kevin, insert last name, right? Come to the principal's office. And Kevin doesn't even think for a second about the interaction he had with the Dream Stan earlier yesterday. He doesn't even think about it for a second, right? He's like, oh, what did I get in trouble for? Because Kevin was up to a little bit of nonsense here and there, so he was thinking it was just something kind of minor like that. But oh boy, did he have a surprise when he got there. So when Kevin walks into the principal's office, she's standing or sitting on one side, and she's looking very stern. She's looking very upset. And Kevin's kind of taken aback because while he was up to a little bit of nonsense, he didn't feel like anything he was doing deserved the look he was getting. And especially he was really taken aback when he heard the next thing the principal was about to say. Because the principal looks at him and says, Kevin, I'm going to give you one chance now to come clean to what you did, and I'll give you a lesser punishment. And let me just say that this really took Kevin off guard, because he was like, what? Come clean to what? And the principal, when he said that, the principal's like, all right, just know I gave you an opportunity to come clean because we got some pretty good evidence on you. Kevin at this point is completely confused. And still, he's not even thinking about the interaction he had with the Dream Stan earlier, but as you guys will see that there's a pretty big correlation. So anyways, Kevin's sitting down, and the principal's like, Kevin, we take threats at this school very, very seriously. Even if you meant this as a joke, you got to understand that, we got to take it as if you meant it very seriously, as it's pretty disturbing. And Kevin at this point is so just bewildered and flabbergasted. He just has no idea what to think, because he's like, threats? I didn't make any threats against any students. And he looks at the principal, he's like, I'm so sorry, I'm so lost right now. I don't even know, what's up. And she's like, well, Minecraft, Dream Stan, right? We're just going to call him Dream Stan. She said his actual name, whatever that is. And she's like, well, Dream Stan, came to me yesterday, and he looked all flustered and upset. And he said that he found this in his locker. And the principal pulls out a handwritten note. And she's like, does this look familiar? And, Kevin honestly says, no, I'm being honest. That does not look familiar. She's like, all right, well, I'll let you give it a read since you haven't seen it before. Kevin legitimately has never seen this letter before. So he takes the letter and he looks at it. And yeah, sure enough. And Kevin's reading the letter. And the letter reads Dear Dream Stan, says his actual name. I will hunt you down when you're sleeping, and you will not wake up afterwards. This is a threat. It literally said, in quotes, this is a threat. And then it's signed, and then it said Kevin. And Kevin is like, oh my God. Kevin is starting to put the pieces together that the Dream Stan, when he said, I'm going to ruin your life for saying that, he legitimately meant like he was gonna try and get him in trouble. Like he was gonna try and get him expelled from the school with like a false like allegation like this. And Kevin is just completely bewildered. And the principal's like, Kevin, you know, like that's pretty damning evidence. And she's like, you know that I mean, like, I don't really know what else to say here. Like, you've been a pretty decent kid, but yeah, I mean, this is going to get you expelled. So Kevin's thinking really quickly on his feet because he's like, all right, I am not getting expelled for calling Dream mid. Like, like, bro, that's not going to be the reason that I don't have a successful life because I like drop out of school too early. He's just like, it's not going to end like this, man. It's simply not going to end like this. So Kevin's trying to think as quickly on his feet as possible. By the way, if you comment Dream down below right now, I'm going to heart a bunch of comments that say Dream. A little fun fact. But anyways, right, so Kevin thinks quickly on his feet, and finally, he figures it out. He says, I know how to prove this isn't me. And, you know, the principal was pretty convinced it was him. So she's like, all right, like, I'm all ears. And he's like, I mean, I have my backpack with me. I can show you a handwriting sample. This is very clearly not my handwriting. At this point, the principal, like, her ears kind of perk up a little bit, and she's like, oh, what do you mean? And, you know, he brings out, like, he goes into his backpack, and he's like, here's a random piece of work I was going to turn in for English later today. And sure enough, the principal's like, all right, let me see this. And she holds up, you know, Kevin's work, and then she holds up the threatening letter, and she's like, yeah, okay, these are clearly two different, like, handwritings. Like, I'm no expert at this, but this is not your handwriting. Doesn't mean that you didn't do it, but it is now, you know, this is put into suspicion. And, you know, Kevin says, hey, is there any way you can get a copy of the Dream Stand's handwriting? And the principal says, oh, you think he framed this on you? And Kevin's like, yeah, I have a reason to believe. And Kevin goes on to explain the little bit of the story I explained earlier, and the principal goes, that would be ridiculous for him to make this up about. He's going to get in big trouble if it's true. And Kevin goes, yeah, like, I thought the same thing, but it seems like that's the most probable case. And, you know, the principal says, you know what, like, I'm actually going to go, like, phone up his English teacher, and I will get the most recent written work he has. And sure enough, right, within like, I don't know, 20 minutes, the English teacher actually walks to the principal's office because Kevin wanted to stay there and see the whole thing through. He would be too stressed out in class anyways. And the English teacher comes in, gives the Dream Stand's work. The principal looks at it, looks down the paper, looks at Kevin's writing, looks at the letter, looks at the Dream Stand's writing, kind of sits there for a second, really thinking. This is like Kevin's heart is racing at this point. He is freaking out because he's like, this is kind of like the trial verdict right now. The principal looks up and she's like, yeah, this handwriting is a complete match with the Dream Stand, the same guy who turned this in. And she's like, Kevin, you're free to go. So Kevin heard a couple days later that, you know, the Dream Stand actually ended up getting suspended for an entire week as well. His parents were told about everything. And if anything, his parents' punishment seemed like apparently like it was going to be worse than anything the school could have dished out because the parents were not having this at all. Click on the video on screen right now. I know you'll enjoy it. Just click it. Do it.